Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever it is that you are and wherever you may be. Thank you very much for making us a part of your day. I am Brad Franklin, creative content writer here in Chesterfield, and I'm very glad to tell you that Chesterfield Behind the Mic is on the air once again. It is budget season, and as promised, after our Budget 101 podcast the other day, we were back to talk about FY2024, the budget proposal that was presented to the Board of Supervisors on March the 8th as we record this the day after on March the 9th. Deputy County Administrator Matt Harris, Budget Director Gerard Durkin, also on the show, again to talk about this time the nuts and bolts of the actual budget. So the FY2024 budget presented to the Board of Supervisors yesterday. Obviously, lots of public input coming over the next few weeks, various opportunities for folks to come out and have their voices heard, hear presentation from staff on the budget. If you have any questions, please go to Chesterfield.gov/budget. All the materials are there. There are opportunities for you to provide your feedback there as well. If you're watching the show, you're going to see various charts and graphs and things that Budget had prepared as part of that presentation that will be kind of used as a visual guide for this. If you're somebody who's listening to the show, feel free, like I said, Chesterfield.gov/budget for more information. Matt, let's start here. Big picture, $1.94 billion, 9.4% increase from 23. You did a great job, I thought, the other day of sort of framing this as the power of and. And I thought, as you look through this budget, the idea of and, right, able to do this, but also and this. And I'm just curious, in terms of framing that sort of merger between doing a lot of what the people of Chesterfield expect, but also doing it in a fiscally responsible way. As you guys put this thing together, and we talked a little bit about this in Budget 101, but as this specific budget got put together, there was obviously a lot that went into it. And I'm just curious, that level of and, how unique is that to this specific budget, or is this just sort of the culmination of a continued process that you guys have been on for years now?
Well, first, Brad, I should point out that Charts and Graphs and Things is also the title of Gerard's autobiography. It's available on Kindle.
But only Kindle, apparently.
Only on Kindle. It's not selling well. But no, you're right. I mean, I think that absolutely is our theme for this plan, because I think it's, there's a perception that you can't have both of those things. You can't have tax relief, you can't be cognizant of the ratepayer, and you can't make big broad strokes on county initiatives. And this plan, more so probably than any of its predecessors, does both of those. And I think it's a point of pride. And it's something that the board has really set that tone, and staff is just following through and laying out this budget proposal that was put forth yesterday.
Gerard, in terms of being able to put something like this together that has so much involved, right? There's a lot of pieces moving at the same time. A process, I'm guessing, that took several years. How proud are you guys of what you were able to sort of put in front of the Board of Supervisors yesterday?
I mean, extremely proud. There's a lot of effort. You'll see. As Dr. Casey said in the transmitted letter, there's a lot of hands and conversations that have went into the budget that was proposed before the board yesterday. It takes a lot of effort, both internally with us as a staff, working with county leadership, other departments, and we talked about that 5-year plan yesterday. It's like the power of and. It's a culmination of all those things coming together, and we really demonstrated yesterday, what we can do as an organisation for the community, not just on one front, but on a multi-pronged front.
Right.
And I would say, Brad, I would add that there's probably 10 things in this plan that would make for this is my 15th one of these animals, and there's 10 things in and of themselves would be like a nice headline for a budget, and I think this plan has 8 or 10 of those in here all combined, and I think that's the pride factor. But it is, you're right, it's the culmination of multiple years. You're gonna edit that out. Multiple years of planning, to get there. We take an iterative process here. We aren't able to do any one thing in a single year,
right?
But this year, really marks wrapping up a lot of these multi-year initiatives, and really makes for a well-rounded plan, and I think one that's very in tune with the public. I mean, this is what we have heard from them over the last 3 or 4 years, and we're making big strides in these key areas. And I think another thing, it's a very focused plan.
Right.
We're not getting into all of these other ancillary lines of business and adding departments and head count and, in other areas, we're going to stay in our lane. We're going to be, the best at what we do,
right,
and why we're here and what the people expect, when they write those checks. And, I think we're doubling down on those core areas.
Right.
And providing them, some much needed tax relief in spots.
Now, speaking of process, obviously for any school budget, regardless of the year, there's a long process that goes as a part of that. There's a lot of different, those sort of like markers in the sand, so to speak, right? You get to here and you get to there, and it was one of those, one of those parts of the budget. I think that you can tell from the amount of the size of, or the I'm thinking of that one chart that you have that shows the blocks, of the pieces of the budget. And there's one that's, obviously the school budget's more than 50% of the entire county budget. And that there has to be a lot that goes into that. And the investment in education in this budget is robust by any stretch of the imagination. It accounts for, like I said, 50% of the entire budget. The base transfer from the general fund to the schools increases by $20 million, which is a $3 million more that was projected in the school board's approved budget. And then I guess by allocating not just that 3, but then the additional 5, that helps to basically have the school's deficit before we start talking about what the state is able to give us. Matt, talk to me a little bit about sort of the process by which you guys are able to come up with the numbers here and make it all work and put the county in such a position to invest this, like I said, in such a robust way in education.
Well, first of all, the state budget process is the original March Madness, Brad, as you know. And so that's why we're in this process. I mean, the word now is the state might not provide a budget to us until June. So, we're not at the luxury of waiting around for them to, come back to town and take care of their business. So, we move forward. We put our marker down yesterday. Our simple message to the state is, meet us in the middle, meet us halfway. So the board of supervisors, in consultation with them and Dr. Casey, we deferred some initiatives in this plan, not to another year necessarily, but just to a delayed implementation, something that, we kind of call in the wave 1 and wave 2 approach. It's a budget within a budget, to be Shakespearean for a moment. Yeah, that was for Gerard. That makes me feel at home. But, so that created some capacity to further invest in schools because we, clearly 50% of every dollar in this budget going into the school division, and that's an important statistic. I'm glad you mentioned that. And then putting some one-time monies in place, we've been able to cut 16 in half to 8. We think there's a very reasonable path the state comes through for all of the 8 or maybe more. If it's more, then the one-time monies, the one-time investments can be pared back, save those dollars for another rainy day.
Right.
If it's less than 8, we will figure that out. But, we're developing contingency plans. But I think, hopefully at the end of the day, and there's a full-scale push, county board of supervisors, school board, and really folks throughout the state to put pressure on the Commonwealth to take care of their responsibilities, in the education front. I think they're doing a CNN special on education, so it's reasonable to think that maybe they could fund the budget.
That would be a topic for another day. We'll see what comes from that. Gerard, in terms of the investment in public safety, one of the parts that really stood out to me was the 36 additional positions to achieve the fire and EMS minimum staffing goal. That is something that I can imagine. It's one thing, like you mentioned, Matt said, the one-time money is 36 additional positions year after year after year is that ongoing cost has to be, something something that demands like a lot of attention, I would imagine, when you're budgeting. It's one thing to spend a little money here. It's another thing to say you're going to do it forever and in perpetuity. In terms of being able to make that investment in public safety, there are other pieces of that, there's a lot more that goes along with that, but that one seems to be the big part of here. How much of an emphasis was that in the process, and how did that sort of come together with those 36 positions?
I mean, it's across all of our public safety agencies, they're out there day and night doing an exceptional job for our citizens, and, there's a lot of overtime costs associated with that. It's been a work in progress for years. The fire department had brought in an outside consultant on that, really took a kind of methodical approach to, how do we resolve this problem? We can't bite the entire apple in 1 year. So how do we phase this thing in? We'd added positions as part of the current year budget in fiscal year 23. Coming back to that wave approach, we took the kind of pragmatic approach of not doing everything in July 1, both to help what we can transfer to schools, but recognizing the kind of flux in terms of the economy out there. But, the original plan is, we'd outlined in the 5-year plan in the 23 budget was to do this over 2 years. But with the January 1 wave 2, we were able to condense that and provide the 36 positions in fiscal year 24's budget a year ahead of schedule.
That's great.
And that's one of the situations where basically at the end of the day, you're going to spend the money one way or another. It's overtime. You're going to force folks to come back and take shifts. Some of it's voluntary, but at a certain point, you can only do that for so long.
Right.
It has a wear and tear on the workforce. So we're able to finalize what's been, again, a multi-year initiative, and I think it's one of the signature pieces in this budget.
Absolutely. Speaking of signature pieces, obviously for the workforce component of things, you mentioned this in the press briefing the other day, but the idea that as everything else gets expensive, because of inflationary pressures and that kind of stuff, there's a lot that goes into running the business of the county, right? Being able to find the people to run the business of the county and to do the jobs. And this investment in terms of the workforce is obviously a big part of that. Phase 2 of the pay plan for non-sworn county government employees, bringing salaries into a more competitive market position, as well as raising the minimum wage to $16 an hour. Increase in public safety starting salaries by 10% effective July 1, alongside an annual 2.25% pay step increase that goes into effect along with that 10% in January 1st. So, Matt, in terms of the workforce part of this, it stands to reason that because of there are so many pressures on all businesses, be they private or public, right? Anybody who's trying to employ people these days, seems to me that everybody has a shortage of everything, right? You can't find enough this, you can't find enough that. This seems to be something, especially with that minimum wage increase, that was a necessity, and it goes along with that sort of pragmatic, process-oriented approach the county took to do this, 2-year study. How impactful do you feel like that investment in workforce really is for the county?
Yeah, I mean, there's absolutely a shortage of workers, in every industry. Ours is no different, but we have, through the board of supervisors, been proactive in this space. And really going back to fiscal 21, this has been a full 4-year ride to get all of these pieces in place. But I think what we've been able to build with the workforce here, and I think with folks that, onlookers that thinking about coming to the county is, there's a trust that we're going to, first and foremost, before we do anything else, take care of the workforce. I mean, our talent in all departments is what makes us special. I think we've done an extremely good job of recruiting. We've got, public safety is always going to be under a little bit of strain. I think that's an even more restricted pool than some other areas, but they have made unprecedented investments in the workforce in the last couple of years. We've made that job number one, and this budget just continues those pieces. I think one different thing for us is, ours is market-based. It's right. We didn't say everybody gets this percentage or everybody's treated this way. We actually went out, we did a market study. We've responded to that. The minimum wage is responsive to market conditions. The public safety plan meets their needs. The phase 2 for junk arm meets their needs. There's also a 7% increase for teachers, as proposed. So we maintain that competitiveness, and within, against our closest competition, we are the pay leader for these key jobs. There's just no question about it. And I think we see the results in the quality of service that we are able to provide. Yeah. And if all of that wasn't enough, if all of the, investments in education and public safety and in terms of the workforce wasn't enough, there's also the investment in infrastructure with, not just the stuff coming out of the bond referendum, which is obviously a huge, overwhelmingly supported vote last fall, but then there's also the construction funding for the phase 1 of the Powhite Parkway extension. Gerard, I would imagine that that's not necessarily something that a lot of budget folks do, right? I mean, all my years of media, I don't think I remember seeing a local government being able to start a process like this for something that impactful. What does that say to you? Not just about the sort of
the sort of focus of the board of supervisors and of the county, but also too from a budgeting standpoint. How difficult of a task was that in this budget?
It's been, said in the letter, and we've put it on blog posts before, it's been kind of this dotted line since the late 1980s.
Right.
And so being able to take that from that dotted line on a map to something that eventually will be like a concrete reality is a big thing, especially for localities in general. I mean, usually these things come with a kind of blend of local, state, and federal dollars.
Right.
We did apply for federal funding in this one. Federal government, for its own reasons, didn't decide to go ahead and approve the $58 million that we had applied for. Mm-hmm. But, we went back to the drawing board and looked at various tools that we can use. And, that's one of the things we do across this entire budget.
Right.
And working with various sources, able to piece it together to look to say, hey, even if these other partners don't come to the table, we can find a way of doing this.
Right.
Along with what the state's given as a grant for the Upper Magnolia site, it kind of starts to unlock that whole piece of the county opening up to the infrastructure.
Right.
And it's the outcome of being focused. I mean, we wouldn't be in a position where we can tackle big stuff like this if we were, trying to address 700 different, concerns. We talked about it today: public safety, education, infrastructure, and then the support workforce that makes all that happen. And you can't do it without that. That's what that phase 2 is about. It's the finance folks, the IT, the lead, all those. Don't see them, on the front lines. Somebody dresses up like them for Halloween, but they do make all this happen. And so we stay very, very focused in this plan. The last couple plans in those areas, and it puts you in a position where you can take these big swings. And this budget is just dripping with them.
Yep. Last thing on infrastructure, Matt, I just want to get your point of view on this. That Powhite extension, it feels like one of those pieces where that is such a significant project that getting that level of work done is going to make it even more of a realistic, path, as Gerard mentioned. How does that change the calculus a little bit for whatever happens with Upper Mag, but in terms of just being able that part to basically get that project to completion? How big of a deal is it to get this first phase lined up?
Well, yeah, it's multiple fronts. It's a quality of life thing. Folks that are, commuting to that portion of the county, to be able to open it up to Woolridge Road punch throughs coming through. I think the last couple of years we've had more investments and been more responsive to the growth in the Western Hull Street corridor than in the county's history, and this is another big piece of that. But it does also, like you've said, it paves the way for some big economic development days down the road. And, so we can't get it all done, but I think it sends that signal to state, federal, to private folks that might be considering, Upper Mag or taking a look at it, that, we're serious. We're not just waiting around for, Uncle Sam to drop a big check in our lap. We're putting our money where our mouth is. And hopefully at the end of the day, this is $170 million, plus or minus on this phase. We can find some partners to come with us on phase 1, phase 2, but I think we are just, coming out front and saying, hey, this is a priority. We've been talking about it. Now we're going to put some money behind it.
Right.
And I think it gives you a lot of leverage. It gives you a lot more, seriousness when you're having those conversations, as opposed to, like Gerard said, just walking around with the dotted line.
Right. And if all of that wasn't enough, and again, this goes back to what Matt said the other day at the press briefing, the idea of because you're able to do all of these things, which speak to services and whatnot that the county residents have come to expect from their locality. But then the comprehensive tax relief portion of this, which I think is, if you think about it from just the term comprehensive doesn't really do it justice in terms of being all of the different ways that this reaches. I do want to kind of go through this, so bear with me for a second. Again, if you're listening to this, feel free, Chesterfield.gov/budget. All the information is there. You're probably seeing, if you're watching on YouTube, you're seeing a lot of different charts and things throughout. Going to cut the real estate tax rate by at least 1 cent from 92 per $100 of assessed value, but down to 91. You're going to get a 5% rebate on the June 2023 real estate tax bills, which will provide $89 in savings to the average Chesterfield household, equivalent to another 2 cent plus reduction in the tax rate, which is effectively reducing it to 89 cents for this year. Those two measures alone would result in $125 for an average homeowner. But if that's not it, you get the BPOL piece. You've got the personal property tax piece. You've also got the folks for relief for seniors and the disabled. So I'm just curious, Matt, as you put this entire package together for comprehensive tax relief, is there anything else that any other swipes you could even take at the apple? I mean, this seems the term comprehensive doesn't seem to do it justice to me.
Well, Brad, the reality is we have a diverse tapestry of taxpayers here in Chesterfield County, and just going to the real estate rate doesn't touch all of them.
Right.
Going to personal property, if you're renting, you're living in a nice apartment, your real estate tax rate cut, maybe you see that, maybe you don't. You do personal property, they see it. Small businesses, we want to make sure we do some targeted things for them. That's with the B poll. That just means business license tax.
Right.
With this step that the board's taking now, 86% of Chesterfield businesses will just pay a $10 flat fee to do business in Chesterfield County. So, it's hard to do.
It's hard to make it even
much better than that.
Yeah, I was going to say it's hard to make it easier for businesses in the county.
Our seniors, almost a 9% increase in those eligibility criteria, and that's really first and foremost, make sure we keep those folks in the program. They've come to count on that on an annual basis, and we think it's fundamentally unfair to have a change in their economic situation due just to some inflationary factor. That's they didn't go out and earn more money or do anything different, and it's just the market's moving around them, and then they lose eligibility for that key benefit. So that's a big piece of this. The personal property, that's been a market condition, but how do you and this is another key part of this, and not to get too nerdy, too deep on this, but we designed a tax relief package that is comprehensive, is diverse, like you say, but it also is responsive to the fact that we do have all of these other needs. So a lot of these things that we're doing puts money back in the pockets of Chesterfield taxpayers, but it doesn't dent our rate structure moving forward, such that the last thing in the world Mr. Durkin or I want to do is come back to the board next year and say, oh, by the way, we cut rates too much, and they have to go back up. So we're able to do these things in more novel ways where we can provide the relief when it's needed in meaningful dollar amounts, but not have to change the rate structure so that our ability to raise revenue, if the economy does turn next year somewhere down the line, doesn't prevent further future rate cuts, but it does allow that option. So I think there's a lot of a nuance to the way that this is provided, with a mix of some rate but some one time, and taking advantage of those types of programs.
Right. I guess I want to just open it up for both of you. Any final thoughts? Obviously, there's a lot that goes between now and when the board actually takes its vote on the actual proposed budget. A lot of different opportunities for folks to come out to these community meetings, to go, whether it's the ones you attend in person or maybe you do the one on Facebook Live, submit your feedback, get the information you need. Gerard, any final thoughts for you in terms of putting this? I know you guys are extremely proud of the work you've done, and really looking forward to what's ahead these next few weeks.
Yeah, it's taken many hands to craft this budget, and it's a kind of year by year, conversation by conversation process, and we look forward to the discussions to come before we get the approval on April 5th. Good.
Matt, anything from you?
Yeah, no, I think it's you touched on the rest of the March is really we turn the mics over to the citizens. What do you think about the proposal? The board is all ears all the way up until April 5. And then realistically with the state, on their timeline, whatever that might be, April 5 is not even really the end of the process from, a formal adoption perspective. We'll probably have to come back and make amendments. But, our advice always is, that there's 2 or 3 months where there is intense, budget focus, but we are doing things year round. And as such, the community's ability to have input, to give feedback, if the priorities are getting off track, if there's a new priority, whatever the case might be, you don't have to wait till next January. You haven't missed your chance. We are working on this literally, and that's a big part of the presentation we went through yesterday. We'll be out tonight with our first roadshow. We're hammering that home. We are here 365 days a year. We want to have that conversation. And this board in particular has been very active to use all 12 months to improve upon or take advantage of opportunities that arise to make this community stronger. And, I think you'll continue to see that.
Well, I want to thank Matt. I want to thank Gerard for coming on the podcast once again and talking to us about the 24 budget. Thanks, guys. Really appreciate it. All right, make sure you check us out on social media. On Twitter, it's Chesterfield VA, and on Instagram, it's Chesterfield Virginia, all one word. And on Facebook, you can check out our podcast page. Just search Chesterfield Behind the Mic. Make sure you like that page to keep us as you go forward. Now, let me tell you about all the ways you can check us out. You can watch us on our YouTube channel, as well as on our website, Chesterfield.gov/podcast. An audio-only version of the show is available there, as well as on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Overcast, and a whole host of other services. You can also watch the show on WCCT Thursday through Sunday at 7 on the weekends at noon. That's Comcast Channel 98 and Verizon Channel 28. And lastly, you can check out Chesterfield.gov/connect with us for more ways for you to get in touch with us and for us to get in touch with you. My thanks to my director, Martin Stith, our executive producer, Teresa, Bonifas, and all the folks from Communications and Media. Thank you very much for all that you do. And yeah, thank you out there for supporting the show and giving us a listen. So from all of us here in Chesterfield County, thanks again for making us a part of your day. We'll see you again real soon. Take good care.